Hey guys, welcome to Week 4 recap for Midwest Fantasy Football League. First things first, you got to get something out of the way. I screwed up last week, which who knew was totally possible. I had Chris down as the high scorer. He had about 137.8 points, and Eric actually was the high scorer. Pope 2.0 had 138.5, so I just read that wrong last week. I went back to the video recap and listened in case there was a stat correction or something that changed the scores. Nope, I just screwed it up. So sorry about that, Eric. You missed out on me featuring your team when you got your first win of the season last week, but I will do my best to try to do better in the future. So this week's high score was Gridiron Junkies Andy taking down Dak Deuce, giving Drew his first loss of the season, 129.46 to 86.74. The Junkies had a really strong week this week. They only had one scorer that didn't get double digits. They were led by 20.3 points from Seattle's defense and 19.4 points from Carson Palmer. A really nice week from Drew's Deuce this week. He had 19 points from Drew Brees in the loss. He was really hurt by only having 4 double-digit scorers on his team, and Amari Cooper continuing his underachieving season, only adding 2 points to that total. Week 4's biggest blowout game, Pray for Mojo Jason beat down Pope 1.0's Awesome Possums, 117 to 68, a 49-point margin. Mojo's got a really strong game from his keeper, Travis Kelce, with 21 points, and his second keeper, DeAndre Hopkins, with 22 points. DeMarco Murray, the third keeper, couldn't get in on the scoring train this week as Tennessee got behind by a lot, so they had to go away from running the ball and ended up passing a lot, so it wasn't really a game built for him. He only contributed about 4.5 points in the loss. The Possums basically played dead this week. 15 points from Mariota in the previously mentioned Tennessee loss. They got behind and they kept throwing, and they just kept getting further behind because they weren't having much success trying to throw the ball. So he also struggled this week. Only five of his players scored less than 4 points, which is going to make it hard to score many points, as evidenced by the 67-point total. This week's closest game, down goes Teddy. Lee defeated I Win Because Y'all Drafted Josh. 96.5 to 92.7, a 3.8 point margin of victory. Additionally, he got another nice game from Aaron Rodgers. What else is new? Injury bug hit him pretty hard this week. He lost both Devontae Adams to a concussion, which we all saw in the Packer game, and Chris Carson's broken ankle. Josh is drafted, got a nice week from the Houston defense, added 20 points to the loss, and Keenan Allen also threw in a 19-point game. Again, this week, keepers seem to be struggling, specifically Isaiah Crowell only added 3.2 points, and Jay Ajayi only adding 6 points. Jay Ajayi's Miami Dolphins were shut out in London this week versus Baltimore, so it makes it tough to score any points when you're not getting any touchdowns. In other games this week, Saved by the Bell Brandon defeated John Bobbitt Chris 128 to 80. T-Boeing 747 Nick defeated the second coming Pope 2.0 100 to 77. Sensitive Nipples Derek defeated Gronky Kong me 119 to 107. Last week's notable guys on the waiver wire, predominantly the main guy that everybody was after was Wendell Smallwood. 7 players were in after him last week, and he did show off this week, putting up 15 points, 16 points actually, sitting on my bench. I could have really used those points in my starting lineup as I lost to Derek by 12, so would have been nice to put him in. Unfortunately, Derek also grabbed one of last week's hot waiver wire guy, which was Charles Clay, who put up 13 points this week in the matchup, and he was in his starting rotation, starting at tight end for Derek's sensitive nipples. Finally, Marquise Lee was the other name that we talked about last week on the waiver wire claims. Brandon got only about 3 points on him. He was sitting on the bench, so no harm, no foul, I guess. Hopefully this week's waiver wires continue to pay dividends for those who are spending money on them, and there were a bunch this week. We had 6 players claimed due to all the injuries that were happening in the NFL this week. Another big week of people trying to claim a single player. We had 7 players trying to claim Latavius Murphy. Post-production, Murray. Latavius Murray. He's the backup running back, now the starting running back for the Minnesota Vikings after Dalvin Cook hurt his ankle and is out for the season. This week's waivers saw something that was I thought to be somewhat unusual. We had waiver claims and contested waiver claims on a quarterback, a wide receiver, 2 running backs, a tight end, and a kicker. I mean, how often is there people competing for a kicker? Everybody must be in on Houston's kicker, which I had to look up the pronunciation for. Let's see if I can get this right. I believe it's Kaimi Fairbairn. We'll see if that's right or not. No updates this week in the wager corner. And finally, this week's matchups, there was a couple interesting things to highlight on. With the losses by the 2 previously undefeated teams, we've now got 4 teams with 3 wins and 5 teams with 2 wins. There's a lot of room for movement up and down in the standings, so we'll see what happens after this week. With a massive rash of injuries, it led to a lot of people claiming for new players, and it was a really poor time as this is the first week of real buys, not counting the Miami game due to the hurricane at the beginning of the year. Can the 12 seed take down the number 1 seed as Josh is currently 0-4? I win because y'all drafted goes up against Chris's first place, John Bobbitts. And can the Pope twins, Pope 1.0 and 2.0, currently both sporting 1-3 records, finally grab a second win and jump a little higher up in the standings? We'll see.